Hi, Siena Songbird here. Got another awesome interview ready for you today of the veteran liver flusher series. I hope you love it and make sure to subscribe for more awesome content about liver flushing.
I am your liver, the largest organ inside you. I'm like a supercomputer of the body for all I do.
Yay! We're here today with Adam Parker, coming in from London. Thank you so much again for being willing to be featured as an experienced flusher here, here on in this series. I know you're actually a podcast host as well. I've enjoyed a decent amount of your podcasts. I haven't gotten all the way back and through, but definitely enjoyed some of your work. So yeah, thanks for being here with me.
Siena, thank you for inviting me on the show. I've been following your work and you've had some great interviews, some great guests. So I feel honored to be called a veteran flusher. That's great. So it's great to be on and to share my experience of the wonderful world of liver flushing.
Yeah, you're number 3 in the series so far. I really think that I hope this series might be infinite. It's really, the potential is, I just think it's so refreshing. It's like I might have even had an idea of how I thought the interviews should go to help new people, get a good sense for wanting to do it. And both of my interviews have not been like that at all. But I think that, but they've still the impact is just, I think it's just absolutely priceless to get real on the ground, firsthand experience in these issues. I really do feel like we are the researching edge. We're like we're driving this, we're learning together, and that's why it also has been so fun to get more connected in I wasn't so much a part of the community. I feel like now I'm starting to get more tendrils into the greater Flushing, the current greater Flushing community, and it's really fun.
Well, I think it's just the power of community, right? That's the beautiful thing. I think firstly, there's a need for this information. There's a lot of people out there looking for solutions to their health problems. They've been here, there, and everywhere. They've seen this holistic practitioner, and they're kind of making their own way to this solution. And then the other side of it, as I said, is the community, because there's loads of people doing it. Everyone's leaning in and giving their experience on what's working for them. And I think together it's been beautiful, because you've got the book by Andreas Moritz, and people are building on that work, right? And yes, it's not studies and it's not this, it's real life experience, people coming together in community saying, I've tried this, have you done this, what have you seen? And yeah, as you know, we're in a couple of groups together, and I'm always giving my feedback on what I'm doing, what's working for me. And yeah, really it's people coming together, because would I have got this far without working alongside other flushers? No. And that's the whole point. Everyone's helping each other out. So I love this journey. I love the community. So yeah, it's just great to connect to you as well, Siena, because again, I've been watching your work and seeing how you've been doing things. So it's great that we can all learn off each other.
Yeah, this is so fun. I've had such a fun time, and I'm excited to be here today. I think you pointed out something too, there is this book. It's kind of it's kind of considered our Bible of a health, in terms of the protocol. But I think there are some pretty glaring there's some kind of glaring omissions or certain kinds of skews, from his perspective, or ways in which that book may not be meeting us exactly where we are now. Or as Jeremy was pointing out, yeah, it falls short a little bit, because Andreas Moritz himself didn't quite, maybe even reach for what was possible even for his own life with that procedure. So there's there's the book, it's like a scaffolding, but I think it's absolutely crucial that we navigate ourselves sort of around, within, through, and actually beyond that scaffolding too, to like optimize this process for our world community now, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in the books, you know, yes, it is the Bible, right? And I'm eternally grateful for his work and what he's done, and the knowledge he brought to the space.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right, it falls short in many areas. And it's really interesting because I think one of my beliefs was, you read a book and it's from a doctor or this or that, and it's everything in it is gospel, do not challenge. And as I've developed, not even just with Andreas's book, but other books from other established authors, it made me realize, well, I'm not going to accept everything I read. It's your opinion, it's your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And you are right, the book is amazing, but for me, it falls short on a couple of areas, which, funny enough, stopped me from flushing sooner. So and we'll probably jump into this, but I started flushing 5 or 6 years ago, and I stopped because I just didn't like the methods around it, the dietary requirements and other things. So I was like, this ain't for me, because at the time I was really resonating with, and I still do, the GAPS diets and that style of eating. And I was like, but it's conflicting. And so I kind of said, not for me. But when I kind of came back to it and I thought, no, let's challenge some of these areas, I was able to find methods that worked. So fundamentally, it's a great book. I would say I agree with most of it, but you're right. The dietary perspective, plant-based, and obviously diet's a hot topic in general, right? Everyone's got their ideologies and views. It's not a diet that I resonate with, being a plant-based diet in the book. And the other thing was 12 flushes, right? So, and also the frequency of when you do the flushes. So what I love is the book set a very good foundation for us to build upon. Mm-hmm. And I think, as I said, the community, everyone working together, because sometimes you read a book and it's like, I cannot go outside of the boundaries of this book. This is the thing. But when you're in a community and everyone's like, you know what, I didn't do it every 3 weeks. I did it in 2 weeks. And it's like, oh, interesting, 2 weeks. And are you still alive? Yes, I haven't died. Oh, you know, and then and people have just tiptoed through, trying different diets, trying different time periods. So again, the book is like the foundation. And again, when was the first version published? It must have been 25 years ago, maybe even longer. The very first one, right? That's not that thick. So much has evolved since then. Think about the amounts of toxicity in our environment, EMFs, heavy. I mean, it's a completely different world in many respects, right? So should we still, follow that book to the letter? I think it's good to challenge it,
Yeah, good to challenge it. I really love what you're pointing out, which is this: we have actually been trained in our cultures to that thing you were saying about like taking it as gospel. Like literally, I mean, that's what we went for like 12 years of schooling in. I was like, read this, it is true, now tell us it back, and it brought up that concept too of like just worship as a guru or something like this, the white coat syndrome, any of that. And Andreas Moritz himself, it gives us good material, because he actually, in a sense, as who he is like quite a bit, he actually kind of tries to pull off the sort of like, this is the way, like he actually comes from a bit, if you sense it's quite intense of a sort of pulpit, like a bit righteous kind of transmission, I would say. And your experience with the book, because I've heard this from other people, and my story as well, showed me when I first started flushing, which was like 9 years ago. Again, I was doing it to the T, by the book. He's just so sure about it, and he's like, these things are bad and this is good, and like this is the way. It's like very, and so for people who have that sort of like which might be everyone who's been, you know, gone through our system of, you know, taking information, like being told by an authority, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it takes a bit to stand up to. And I actually know people who like it really got confused by that book, you know, because there are pieces that like we want to be able to extract, but it's like it's surrounded by this kind of like strong dogmatic teachings around some other things. So like you mentioned, it's like I kind of had to drop all of it, you know what I mean? Because I didn't know how to reconcile these things. But this is more advanced working with material and becoming actual real thinkers for ourselves, you know, to grapple with extracting some of it out and also letting some of it go. And
yeah,
I had a similar experience where I was like plant-based back in the day, and actually I think that my flushes weren't even working as well because being, you know, low fat and plant-based, and then I went to a whole different guru direction, the medical medium stuff, and so I was like really, really turned off from both fat and liver flushing. But it's like, yeah, and then also similar story, like coming around to GAPS and that being like super supportive for me and turning things around, but also turning on my bile system and starting to bring all of this possibility back into my life of dredging and moving and circulating these things, you know?
Yeah,
So,
it's so interesting, this whole the conditioning, right? And so there's two sides to it. There's the conditioning and understanding that we need to break free from that, and that is part of this culture. It's a meme. It's like we are do this, do that. Authority knows. But then the other side of it is, I sometimes look at the book and be like, oh, okay, interesting. Well, I have my beliefs, but I have to accept that those beliefs have to be challenged. So is what he says,
right.
Could it be true? Could it be the best thing for me? I don't believe it is, but I have to, you know, I'm if I don't at least challenge it, then
Yeah.
I'm like any person that just won't listen, you know, and explore themselves. So I have looked into it. Haven't really changed much of my views, but I acknowledge, okay, that's a perspective, and before I completely dismiss it, I must open my mind and look at it. But you're right, similar to what happened to you is I read the book, and then as I was just evolving and learning about nutrition and fat doesn't make you fat and fat's good for you and all of these new things, I was like opening my mind. I was like, wow, the flushing protocol wasn't resonating with that. Hence I kind of walked away from it. And I wish I didn't, because man, I think if I'd been going 6 years, oh my goodness, where would I be now? But it's part of life, and you know, everything happens as it should. The other thing as well that I remember from, well, there are two more things. Firstly, this need to drink apple juice. My goodness. I remember I was like, and then it's like, oh, you can drink apple cider vinegar. I was like, I don't know which one's worse, like super sour or like too much sugar. So I remember that. And then the thing that really put me off as well was the narrative in the book about a stuck stone. And I was like, oh my God, oh, I do not want to start. And really, I understand why he's put it in, but really, it's such a non-issue. It's such a non-issue. I've never really spoke to anyone that's had that scenario. I think I would evolve the terminology to congestion, like you feel congested in the area. But a stuck stone, it's such a over exaggeration of what that is, you know. So I remember my very first flush. I remember it so clearly. You know, do all the bits, and I was like, oh, buddy, I've been vegan for a week, and that's tough going. And then I'm like, to my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, I was like, right, I'm off to bed, do the concoction. And as soon as I felt any sensation, I kind of went into panic mode. I was like, oh my God, it could be a stuck stone. And it was no need, you know, and that's part of the process. It was just things moving through, but I'd expected to feel nothing and just lie there. There was never any pain. It was just any sensation, my mind, and we, you know, how powerful is the mind and our beliefs. I built it up. If I feel anything, it's dangerous, you know. And that was another limiting factor because it was in the book, but I get why he had to put it in the book, right? Because I also think if you're in a spot where you're not well and your nervous system is super heightened, you're probably going to freak out at things like that, right? But when you're in a better spot and your nervous system is more calmer and you are more calm and more zen as a result, you're not going to be bothered by those things, along with having more knowledge. So that was another thing that put me off. I was like, I can't have any, oh my God, there's sensation in there, you know, which is normal. But at the time I was fixated on this, you know, stuck stone narrative.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I think what you were talking about pointing out is like this idea that just because someone presents an idea that is different than our beliefs doesn't mean it's not worth us looking into. And like, I was thinking the phrase kind of like trying it on, you know, like moving outside of our, you know, rigid sort of established ideas and just trying it on, which is something I feel like I have done thoroughly with a variety of different doctrines, you know, and gone like really deep down that path to be, you know, to see what that belief system is like. And I do think as I picked up the book again, you know, 7 years later or whatever, I was allowing some of it to wash past me, but I have implemented something that he suggests, which is that I'm shifting my main large meal. It was already kind of early afternoon, but I'm kind of shifting it towards midday, you know, just this sort of Ayurvedic and sort of commonsensical idea of the digestive fire being strongest kind of at noon at the high sun, you know, in the middle of the day. And for someone who, you know, struggles to digest and assimilate, I'm like, I might as well give myself like the best opportunity, you know, to get something out of this food and also not be depleting my resources when I need to be rejuvenating, you know, in the night. So yeah, you know, as we come through these cycles, like a pass and then a second pass and a third pass, it's like there are things we can glean from it. We can let ourselves be educated or try things on.
Yeah, I like a lot of his work. I've got a couple of his books, and I forget there's one of them,
The Timeless Secrets.
That's the one. It's an absolute monster. So thick, right?
Yeah.
And I love that book.
Yeah.
And there's so much relevance, and I agree with so much of it, right? And I like his perspective on Ayurveda, and I've even bought one of his ionic stones. Have you read about them?
No, I don't think so.
Oh man. Okay, so there's a small chapter on these ionic stones, and they have energy and life force. And there's a site that sells them. I was like, why the hell not? So I bought these stones. I had them kind of scattered around the house. I'm like, the mindset I have is I will try everything. So I love health in so many ways. I'll always be experimenting. So
well, that book is like kryptonite for that kind of person, because me too. I mean, it's just peppered, right? It's like it has a little section here about this, it has a section here about this. And I honestly have gotten many jewels out of that book. It really is. It is dense. And it also, like, as I pick it up, and maybe that's part of why it's called timeless, because really when I pick it up, I'm like, this is still relevant. A lot of this is very, very relevant. And you know, that's impressive too.
Yeah. And if you watch his content on YouTube, you can tell his heart is in the right place. He's not selling anything. He's not dropping NLP. He's not, you know, he's literally here to give. He's been given these gifts, and you know, I really, and I don't know whether we'll jump into this, but my sixth sense has really heightened through flushing. My intuition, it's always been good, but you can tell when someone is really just there to give and to, you know, serve. And you know, he's a very you know, I think he's German, right? He's very to the point, and there's no fluff, and he just knows what he knows, and he gives, and I love that as well, because it's like you're in safe hands when someone is only trying to do good, right? There's no like program at the end or whatever. It's just like, wow,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and yeah, just thank you to him and his life's work. And yeah, this is a beautiful little exploration, and I would like to hear a little bit more of your sort of your origin of getting into this work. How did that come to be? Why, you mentioned also like kind of like all the things, but like what brought you to the healing path, and specifically to the liver flushing?
Yeah, it was a long journey. So let me think. So I would say around the age of 30, so coming up to 10 years ago, before my 30th year, young guy living in London, enjoying life, Brits love a drink, partying, just a young guy just enjoying himself. And at the time I thought I was healthy, like kind of mainstream healthy. I'm not eating McDonald's every day, so it's fine, it's kind of fine. And if I do eat out, I'm eating something that's not McDonald's, but I knew nothing about quality of food or seed oils, anything like that. And then around the age of 30, it was quite a dramatic shift, really. I went from great energy and happy-go-lucky to, within I would say 6 months, just everything started to go downhill. So hormones, I started to get real bad anxiety. And back then, I don't know what it's like in the States, I'm sure it's similar, but like now there's a real narrative around mental health, right? They're like, it's such a thing here. There wasn't that at all. That didn't exist. There was no mental health narrative. I didn't even know what anxiety was. I was like, I don't feel normal. I wasn't even calling it anxiety, because I didn't even know. I was like, why am I not feeling normal? And then I thought, the first thing I thought was, am I going mental? Honestly, I thought, I don't know why this is happening. What's going on? That was the first thought. My hormones went really kind of downhill. I lost my confidence. It was really random things, like I struggled to look people in the eye, and it was weird. I was like, why is this happening? Random things were going on. And I was basically like, as you're getting, I'm sure some of the listeners resonate, you have coping mechanisms to deal with. So like, I'm anxious, so I've found a coping mechanism to make it look like I'm not anxious, right? But I really am anxious. So the coping mechanism was just drink more alcohol, right? or whatever it was. And I was just finding these little like ways to kind of act normal, but I wasn't feeling normal. And then eventually I was like, okay, I'm not great. And I confided in a friend at the time. And I was like, I feel really weird and I don't feel great, blah, blah. And he obviously, friends, they want to help, and they want to give and find a solution. So he said, oh, I know this psychiatrist. You go to him, have a conversation. He's like, cool, fine, I'll go. So I went, and and I think those guys have their time and their place 100%. But I had a couple of sessions, and I was like, this is not the problem solver. It wasn't. I just knew, I was like, my body physically, there's something going on. So then I remember I was just like Googling at home, like thinking, what could it be? And and at the same time, my sex drive just tanked as well. And I was thinking, that's also weird, right? For a guy in his early 30s. So I was just like Googling hormone issues. And then I started to stumble across like holistic health. That's the first kind of road I found to jump in. I was like, oh, interesting. This is cool. Actually, and before that, I went to the doctors as well. And even at that time, I knew I'm not going to take pills. I kind of knew that wasn't a route I wanted to go down. And some of my hair was falling out as well. I had like some bald patches showing. And again, which I now know is thyroid issues. But, I had my workarounds. I just shaved my head. So it was really short, so people couldn't notice. I always had my little mechanisms so people would know. So I go to the doctors. And I was like, doctor, I'm feeling anxious, my hair's falling out. And they're like, right, antidepressants for the anxiety and steroid cream for the hair. And I remember thinking, right, okay, we'll meet halfway. I'll take the steroid cream. I'm not taking antidepressants. That's a definite no. I took the steroid cream, like rubbing it in, and it kind of worked, you know. And I was like, okay, cool, that's one problem ticked off. You know? And anyway, so then I started going down the holistic route, and that is a very deep rabbit hole. I mean, it's extremely deep. So, like most people do, you start going to holistic practitioners after holistic practitioners. And I was doing that for years and not seeing any results. And it was, you know, there's also the emotional element of how much money it costs to work with a practitioner. And you don't know, so you put all of your faith into them. And so you should, because you need to, you know, you need to invest. And I was on supplement regime. I mean, my goodness, I remember when we would go away and I would literally be like packing my supplement like stack. It's like, right, Monday's done. And honestly, I was popping 20 pills a day, you know, and I loved it because I was like, yeah, I'm a biohacker thing. And I still love that space, you know. I still think any way to improve health is great, but that's one of the mantras of biohacking, isn't it? You know, and Dave Asprey's done a great job in bringing certain health narratives to the forefront. But I kind of got into that space as well. So I was doing the holistic thing, and I was getting into that community of like, you know, what's my stack? And I had all these different supplements, all the while not improving.
Yeah.
You know, like little marginal gains, and some supplements would make you feel you get a buzz out of some supplements. So that's the kind of route I did for many years, right? And man, I can't even think how much I spent over the years, because luckily, and the gift is I was in a good job that I could hold down, that I was earning good money, so I could fund this whole operation, you know, because I kind of think I think you know, I feel compassion for people that get into. I think if I'd got sick in my early 20s, I wouldn't have had the finances to have worked this out. Okay, maybe that's the journey that you went on. You know, I was like, I can bankroll this and do loads of trial and error and work it out. So I'll say I didn't waste any money, because I think every practitioner that I went to, I learned a little thing about the bigger picture of health, you know. And some of them have become good friends, you know, and they have their thing. And I think that's interesting. Each practitioner has their kind of set kind of thing that they do, and their perspective, their paradigm on health. So did that for a long time. And, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and I'm kind of getting there. And then the big breakthrough came to me when, I'm just trying to think if I'm missing anything in the middle, because you know, like, it's such a long journey. It's just like, don't miss anything. But one of the big pieces for me was when I started doing protocols that were very detox focused, and I started to see improvement. And I was like, oh, interesting. There's a little glimpse of hope here. And one of the big levers was doing the Bob Beck protocol. Don't know if you've heard of that. It's electromedicine.
Yeah.
And
That has to do with the silver thing.
Yeah, the silver pulsar. Yeah. So I did that, and I remember doing it. And the first day, I was just kind of on the sofa, and my I think it was my gallbladder, or it must be my gallbladder, because it was pulsating. It was literally pulsating. I was looking down like, what the hell's going on? You know, and it was going crazy. And then that night, because I think you start so the protocol for any of the listeners, it's there's 4 different elements to it, and you're supposed to start slow and build up, and it's about electromedicine. There's a bit of ozone therapy in there, and drinking colloidal silver. And you're supposed to start slow with the kind of electromedicine side of things. It's like, right, do 20 minutes a day, build up. And my personality and the way I've always approached things is go 110% until you hit a wall and bounce back off. And then I've worked out my tolerance, right? And then that's my new kind of comfortable. And I remember the first day, it was like, I read all the instructions. It was like, right, 20 minutes, and then you build up every day. I'd watched all the videos. I did an hour and a half straight off the bat. And I remember that literally I literally within hours started coming down, which I was like, oh my God, I'm getting the flu. I'm literally coming down with, I was on the sofa thinking, oh my God, I'm getting hot. And I was like, babe, I'm getting sick. Oh my goodness. And I was thinking, this is so weird. So then I thought to myself, could it be that I'm doing this thing? If it is, just drink loads of water. So I literally took drinking loads of water. And as fast as it came on, it went away.
Wow.
And it was the weirdest thing. It was such an eye-opener to be like, wow, that's so interesting. I thought I was coming down with the flu. I was in a bad spot. Within hours, I'm back out of it. Interesting. So anyway, that was a turning point. And that at that point, my whole perspective shifted to, maybe it's not about what I can take in and like supplements and stacks. Maybe it's about what I need to get out. And that was such a big moment.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, just to the point, something I missed out, I'd done, before the Bob Beck protocol, I'd done everything, gaps, and I love gaps. And I've had Dr. Natasha on my show. I've been on her farm. I've eaten dinner with her. Like, she's an amazing woman. She's a healer. And I love the GAPS diet, but I was doing it and it wasn't getting me to where I needed to get to. And I realized GAPS is a great diet to slowly detox, but I think some people, depending on genetics, depending how well you can detoxify and how well your drainage channels are, you need a little bit more. And I was, oh my goodness, I was super strict. Oh my God, I was so strict on my GAPS. I'd go home for Christmas and my parents would be like, oh, no chocolates. No chocolate. And I was so, and there was one Christmas I literally didn't have any chocolates, and it was such a good mental test. It was so hard. So I did that all. But when I did the Bob Beck protocol and I detoxed, that really changed the game for me. I shifted my focus to detox.
Yeah, that's a remarkable turning point, and thank you for sharing your story. And I'm just over here giggling because some of it just sounds so resonant with how I am and how I accidentally can't help approaching things like that too. Even if really I do understand that slow and steady actually would get you there faster, but it's like, no, can't even. But
I think it's just as well. I just like to. There's a side of me that I just love to break rules and do it my way, and I'm like, and I get stung for it. I really do. And my wife, when I hit the wall, and I'm like suffering, my wife just looks at me like, why'd you do it to yourself?
This to yourself.
Yeah, and I'm lying there going, and I do it again.
Oh, this is so beautiful. Yeah, but I love that you're pointing out that turning point for you, where it's like, all this time I'm like trying to take things in. Even GAPS is like, even if you drop all the supplements, which is an awesome step to get to, you're still trying to heal through nutrients. You're trying to nourish yourself into health, which is really important, I think. But it is different than getting things out, Although I some of my favorite detoxification methods are when you can get things out by flooding with nutrients, I mean, those methods seem superior to like the stripping only, the stripping methods. But that shift of focus for yourself in your story, the shift of paradigm of like, no, this seems like the progress I'm getting, it's the direction I need to go is getting some stuff out.
And I do want to say nutrition is so important. But the reason I think detox just pips it is because if you are congested and toxic, you're not going to digest, assimilate, absorb those nutrients. So you can have the best diet, but if you can't digest it correctly, then it's not really going to, you know. So it's a hard one, isn't it? And I think you can detoxify just through good diet. You can, and I think it's dependent on many things. It's dependent on your age, lifestyle, where you live, your genetics. So when I reflect on my story, you know, part of my journey, I did a DNA testing. Obviously, I'm like, right, what's the DNA saying? And there's a company called DNA Fit. And first I did 23andMe, and then it's like, you can transfer your data to DNA Fit. So I did that. And it gives us a nice little infographic on, you know, you metabolize caffeine really fast and blah, blah, blah. And one of them was you detoxify really slowly. It was like, there was like this kind of like leveler thing, and I was right at the bottom. And I was like, interesting. And, you know, because I was looking at like friends and like, why are you guys, you know, we live the same lifestyle. Why are you fine? Why am I suffering? Right. So yeah, I think nutrition is important. Everyone's at a different stage. And now I think as you come out of the trenches of being toxic, nutrition is like one of the key pillars, because you need to understand how to nourish yourself to rebuild, to create healthy bile flow, right? Because bile isn't made of, the proteins that bile is made of is mainly in animal foods, right? So it's so important, the nutritional part. But when I realized get the detox paths moving, get the congestion out, get your pathways flowing again, then the digestion or the digestion of good food was so much more impactful. You know, and I was feeling nourished. I was like, okay, I feel good now, you know.
Yes. Okay, back to keep going. So you got through the Bob Beck stuff, and
yeah, I also, again, I'm just thinking back to all of a sudden I got poorly, right? That when I got so sick. Poorly, the British word. Like, you're feeling poorly, it's like when you're feeling sick. So to reflect back on, well, what could that have been, right? An overnight drop. Well, when I look back on reflection, it could have been many things. It could have been mercury toxicity, because I remember at the time I had some mercury fillings removed and changed over, because I was like, literally vanity metrics. I was like, oh, that doesn't look nice in my mouth. Oh, you can get nice porcelain ones. So I did that. That might have added to it. I don't think that was the kind of crescendo, but that was kind of in and around the time. My lifestyle was, I was out partying 3 or 4 times a week, like pretty consistently, loving it as well. Eating what I thought was healthy, not sleeping well. In my room, it's so insane, but in my room in London, the wall in front of my bed was just covered in mold, just black mold. And I just remember thinking, oh yeah, just mold on the wall, it's fine. I didn't know, right? And also it could have been a bunch of things that, again, eventually my cup was filled, and then once it starts to overflow, symptoms occur. So I can't pinpoint the one. Could it be molds? It was probably a bit of everything. I always think there's no magic bullet for health. I think liver flushing is such an important pillar to recovery, but it's not the magic bullet, in my opinion. And there's no magic not magic. There's no like death bullet on the other side that knocks you over. It's gonna be, could be heavy metal poisoning, could be mold toxicity, could be EMFs. I think the body is very resilient, and I think that eventually a lot of things are going to take you out, right? So I kind of think, what happened? How did I go? Because it was a quite it started, and then it went rapidly downhill after, like, by 6 months in. So again, it could have been all of those things. So again, I want to just give context to the listeners of, it's not like just one day I was happy, then out of the blue for no reason, it all went downhill. On reflection, I always look back at why it could have happened. And yeah, as I said, didn't sleep. I was doing everything that you shouldn't do. Wasn't sleeping, poor diet, partying, mold in my house, mercury fillings. I mean, back then, I don't know what the G was. It was probably just 3G back then. So the amount of electro smog probably wasn't as much like it is now. But anyway, that's just to give context to listeners. That's probably an amalgamation of all of those things kind of killed me over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So how did you eventually get to the liver flushing?
So I started liver flushing probably 5 or 6 years ago. Did a couple of them, just couldn't sustain it. I was like, I can't do the diet and apple juice, and I wanted convenience. I wanted to be like, I could just add, if I could have just baked it in, I would have done it straight away. But at the time, I didn't. There wasn't a community, and I just thought, well, it's just, yeah, I've done a couple, and there's a couple of stones, and I felt a little bit better, but I just thought, oh well, it's just not convenient, and it's just, I'm not going to be vegan. So I kind of left it and let it be. And then I think about a year and a half ago, I was, as all health enthusiasts are, you're on Telegram and scrolling through the groups, and I forget, someone was talking about liver flushing, and I was like, yeah, been there, bought the t-shirt, I've done that, don't you worry. And I just was really, I don't know what it was. There was a calling for me to continue to look into it. I think because I'd done the Bob Beck protocol, and by that point I was kind of feeling pretty good. My digestion was great again. I did, as I said, there's many pillars to health. My whole lifestyle had changed. Nutrition was great, dialed in my sleep. I do all the things, saunering, sunlight, grounding. I know all the bits I do, right? Then the Bob Beck stuff, and I was into the kind of electromedicine space. So I was kind of feeling like pretty good. I'm like, yeah, it's cool. But I always had this pursuit to keep growing and learning. So I'm like, okay, cool. Getting into liver flushing, to check it out. So I got into it, and by this time, second time round, there's Instagram. So I'm like, okay, move from Telegram to Instagram, and there's a nice bit of content on it. So I started finding some of the veteran flushers out there, and it really resonated with me. And as I was doing my research, it's like, oh wow, okay, cool. You can do a different diet. Interesting. That's more flexible, and I just thought, I'm going to give it another go. Why not? And so yeah, I prepped again, and this time I enjoyed it because it could fit around my dietary principles, because I was eating a super clean diet. And so I would say my diet is a blend of GAPS / Western A Price with, occasionally treat myself, like I've now got the flexibility in my life. If I want to have, restaurant food or eat takeout, I can do that. But I know that's not part of what I do, but I can. So that was kind of my diet. And I thought, okay, cool. The flushing works around my lifestyle. Obviously, just eat healthy for the week. Cool. And I did it. And it was like, wow, okay, this is fine. And also, I slept a lot better, because when I did them years ago, I had terrible night's sleep. Terrible. And I was thinking, it could have been the diet, but I slept like fine. I was like, wow, good night's sleep. Next day, stones, cool. This is really doable. And I was like, right, now it's doable, and there's enough content out there. I'm going to continue to just lean into it. And I just really just went all out with it. I just felt it really resonated with me. And as I said, at the time, I was in a really good spot. But again, my personality, I just like to just really max things out. So I just kept doing it. And then I was really, as we've seen through the community, just evolving it and doing things my own way and having the confidence to kind of push the boat out and be like, right, what if I change this? And what if I add in that? And yeah, and then I think another big part of it was, again, my personality. As soon as I set a goal, I'm going to do it. Right. So I was just like, right, I'm going to do 50. And then my mind was locked in. So even if, you know, I was doing them and nothing was happening, just because I set myself a goal, I was going to do it, you know. And I think that's a big, that how my mind works, that's a really big part, because I was like, set a goal and I will achieve that goal no matter what. That's just how my brain works. So
Wow. That's like, yeah, that's really fascinating, because that's different than the way a lot of people approach it, because of the book and the way that it teaches us. It's like, get to your magical 12, or like,
yeah,
if you're not flushing stones, then stop. But it's like, you
yeah.
kind of circumvented some of the drop off points by saying like, no, I'm doing 50. And I'm curious, like, how did you come to think that how did you come to think that that was the commitment you wanted to make, when, like, were there people talking about that high of number as, how did you go from 12 to 50?
Yeah, well, you know, you what's the saying? You lean on the shoulders of giants. So I was looking at the work of Elizabeth Wells, and actually had her on my show, and Liver Flash Gal, and seeing what they were doing, and I was like, oh wow, okay, they've broken the molds. They're doing something so that gave me the interest to pursue it differently, because they had broken the mold of just do 12, or I think in the book, Andreas did 12, his wife did 25, right? And then it was, and once you have a flush with no stone, stop.
2 flushes in a row.
2 flushes, sorry, 2 flushes. And yeah, and so I definitely, in the early days, leaned in on what they were doing, and they've both become good friends, and we message regularly, and they've been on amazing journeys, and it's great to have good friends in the community that you can converse with. So I set this goal, and I was like, I'm going to do it. And I was just like, that's it. And thank goodness I did, because yeah, you get dud flushes, and there's a weird set, like this. There's such satisfaction when you get a good flush, and there's good stones, and you can take pictures, and there's a weird enjoyment. And at the same time, there's a real sadness when you don't, because you think, oh my God, I prepped all week, and if I hadn't set myself a goal just to keep doing it, I wouldn't have pursued it, and I wouldn't have forced myself to continually test and adapt the process, because we have the fundamental pillars of how to prep, but I'm a firm believer that may work for many people. I think that it also won't work for many people just doing the same process. I know some veteran flushes that stick with the malic acid, and it ticks the box and it works every time. For me, I ran into problems probably by flush 13, 14, just getting nothing. I was like, oh, that's so frustrating. So again, I'd set the goal. I was here, and I was like, right, I'm not going to continue doing this and just get duds. That's just not my cup of tea. So it forced me to adapt and just research and try new things. And that's the gap. I mean, that strategy is great in all walks of life. And eventually you just find little pockets of opportunity and then really kind of focus in on it. To now, I mean, I've just finished, I think I did my 60-second flush this week. 60-second, yeah, and just plentiful, loads of stones, great. And I just have such gratitude, like, wow, thank goodness I just persisted. And I regularly say, what works for me may not work for everyone, but I think going through that process, you know all the main kind of preps ups, and you kind of rotate, and also things will consistently evolve. So what's working for me now may not work in the future. So you've got to constantly keep testing. But what, when you're on a good ride, if you're getting good volumes and things are going well, just keep it going. But I look at the likes of Elizabeth and Marta, and they're double where I am in terms of flushes, right? And they're still evolving what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Will I need to go to that amount? I don't know. I'd probably say I wouldn't. And also I don't want to continue doing it for the rest of my life. For me, I'm doing it now, not because there's a healing crisis. I didn't really have one when I started, but now I hit the 50 mark. And then when I reflect back on all the things that have healed themselves, I didn't even think were things to heal,
Right.
I'm like, I'll keep going until the stone stops. So it's a weird scenario. I'm not trying to heal from something, but I'm into this, and I'm as long as I'm getting stones coming out and I'm seeing random things improve, I'm going to keep going,
Yeah, that's so beautiful that that commitment kind of held you to going through the fires of that experimental phase, and pushing the boundaries. And people couldn't necessarily tell you exactly how to make it through and how to make it work for you. And it's something I'm like talking a lot about to the members who are part of my sort of guided group, because it's like part of the reason why I want to keep you close as you go through, a series of flushes, is because it's like, yes, there's a foundation we want to establish, but people need to know that it is not a reliable, like there are going to be variations in how you experience a flush, and there's going to be, troubleshooting that needs to happen at some point, likely. And like, we need to work through that with each individual person, basically.
100%. You need a community. You need people that are a couple of chapters ahead of you. And also there's a joy with being with people a couple of chapters behind you, right? And you can help them out. I wouldn't have got to where I am without having people to lean on. And, because it can be a lonely road, right? Just prepping all week, and it's not like any, I couldn't be like random friends in my actual physical community. Oh, what are you doing this week? Yeah, prepping for a liver flush. They'd be like, what? It's not even worth bringing up half the time, because people, if they're not on a certain wavelength, if people are interested, great, but they're not. I've learned over the years, just don't, like, if people aren't into it, just you crack on and do what you have to do. People have to be interested in health and healing to want to listen to that stuff. So it can be quite a lonely road, right? If you're just literally you doing you all week and just trying to prep for it. So the community feel is great, but it's important to have people in that community that know what they're doing and can guide you, because really you want to save time and money, right? You want to get to the result as soon as you can. And when you're with people that have been there, done that, worn the t-shirt, you'll accelerate your healing for sure.
Yeah, that actually really surprised me when I was like launching the guided program, which actually was inspired by the greater community kind of looking like it was flailing a bit. There's like that really big Facebook community, and I was just like, man, people really are crying out for like a little bit more clarity, direction, hand holding, support. And so I developed like the step-by-step kind of guided thing. But as I was like interviewing people to see if they wanted to do the program or if they were a good fit, it was coming out over and over and over again. And this really surprised me, that like what a lot of them wanted more than anything, like what they thought would be so great about the program, was the community aspect, like you're saying. And I was kind of heartbroken to hear from so many people that they actually have like not people in their life, like you were saying, like they literally feel like they couldn't talk to their friends about it. This one person told me that like he told his girlfriend that he like did a coffee enema and she literally broke up with him. And I just was like horrified, and like my heart this really goes out. So it's like to have community, which is a safe space to, I'm a really big proponent of like demystifying some of these things, tabooifying a lot of these things. Like, whoa, this is just our body, like literally our bodily processes. But I think what you were pointing to too, which I also want to mention, is like some of the communities also, and this has probably been a problem for as long as there have been forums, but I know like some of the Facebook groups, it's like extremely blowing up. Like people are starting to really, there's like massive starting to hit this crisis point where they're actually realizing it has to do with their liver too, or their gallbladder. And it's kind of a mess, you know, it's kind of like a bit of a, like not a pretty show in some of these forums where it's like, it's just like unclear of whether direction that's being given is actually good direction. And there's just this sort of like going in circles of like the same questions or fears even, you know, like perpetuating kind of like myths or fears around it that are scaring people off. So yeah, there's like definitely a balance of like we need community, and also like not all community is maybe what you need, or is, you know, not all like, what about the container too, the container for the community, or like the, yeah, I think that's
yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think you need community, but I think you need kind of layers of guidance, right? And you know, with, it sounds like your program, you head that up and you guide, and that's so important. Whereas I think with and not just in the liver flushing space or within the health space, but general Facebook groups, there is no hierarchy there, really. It's just kind of people leaning in on their experiences. You probably say the moderators, but all they really do is moderate. So I see you saying there is a real need for this information and this guidance, right? But it's just making sure it is channeled in the right way so people can heal. And yeah, depending on the group and the person, depend. And I'm not just thinking about the liver flushing groups, but in general, you know, people can write posts that maybe don't have the right level of knowledge or a fear-based narrative. There's so much there when you look at groups that don't have clear hierarchical structure. So I know what you mean. There's a real need for it, and I think when someone can guide because they've been there and they've gone through things, that's the best way for people to get results quickly. Because really, in any walk of life, I want to learn from someone that's 2 or 3 or 10 chapters ahead, and that's not just in health. That's when I think about business, when I think about, you know, going to the gym and building muscle, whatever it is, I'm always like, right, who's been there, done that? I want to learn of them, you know?
And that's because it can, and for me, what's coming up is the Buddhist path, because it's like, if someone has walked the path, you know what I mean? If someone has literally, if they're at a destination that you know you want to get to, then like they're a great person to learn the path, to like follow the path, because it's actually a shortcut then. Otherwise, you know, you could just be like meandering around, right? So it's like to find someone ahead of you on the path is a way to sort of give yourself a shortcut.
Yeah, and again, that's, you know, when you asked earlier, why did I set the goal of 50 flushes? Because I was looking at people ahead of me and they'd already done 50. So then I was like, oh, I could do 50, you know? And if I didn't have that, I probably wouldn't have set that goal, because I would have thought, you know, my belief system at the time was, you know, 12 flushes and then you're done, you know? So it's people pioneering ahead of me that made me think, okay, interesting, I'll try that out. So yeah, definitely, it's just always find someone that's ahead, you know?
Yeah. So you're at 62 flushes. Like give us a little check-in. Like what are you noticing? What kind of improvements are you seeing, or, you know, what kind of journey has it been?
So I'll be honest with you, because obviously I'm a very healthy guy, but some of the things I've seen involve not the most healthy of habits. So let me explain. So as I said, I didn't need, there wasn't like a real urge to do it, but I knew I want to be a very healthy individual till I want maximum health span, right? Tiny, like maybe 3 months at the end of my life, disease, and then I sign off. So I'm always going to be deeply interested in health. So I refound liver flushing. I was able to find a process that worked around my schedule, that was convenient, around my diet, my lifestyle. Amazing. Set the goal. And had no expectations. Just like, I'm going to do this and let's see what happens. And the things, and as I said, at that point, I was in a very good spot. Healthy guy, nothing really to have much issue on. But as I started doing them, and more, certain things started, like layers of an onion, certain things started to improve. And I was like, could this be the flushing? So random things. So for example, my gray hair started to disappear. Like just I was literally looking in the mirror. I was like, is it going? And then so I've got quite thick hair. My mother is half Jamaican, so I've got the thick hair gene. But it went to another level. It went like super thick. I was like, wow, it's never been this thick, this curly. So random little things like that. I used to get like dry skin on my fingers. I was like, yeah, just dry skin. It's winter, it's fine. That went away. But the thing that when I think I was like 20 flushes in, and I was like, wow, this is interesting. It was, and this is the unhealthy thing. So I haven't had alcohol. I think I had 3 years off alcohol. I was like, just not for me. Kind of an evolution of my character. And I got married July last year. And I was like, okay, get married, it's gonna be champagne. So I had so I kind of broke again, this competitive mindset was, how long can I go, right? I was never like gonna be, I didn't stop for any reason. I just wanted to do it. So I drank on my wedding day, and then rolled around a friend's 40th. So I was like, okay, I could drink, don't have to. And Brits, like, one of the defining, it's cultural, right? Like you drink. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll have a couple. And it was friends I hadn't seen in years, and it ended up just being a long day. And, I drank way more than I would normally, and had a great time. And I think, power to anyone that lives a healthy lifestyle and wants to let loose ever so often. So I had way more alcohol than I would have had in a long, long time. And then the next morning, I woke up and felt fine. As in, I woke up and I was like, why don't I feel hungover? Right? And what came to my mind was, it reminded me of when I was 18. As in, you just went out and you just had party, you drank, and the next day you could go to the gym. You could. I literally felt. I was like, wow. I literally feel like I don't have a hangover. It was I couldn't believe it. I was going to my wife. I was like, I don't feel. I was mixing drinks and blah blah blah, and that was that. This isn't. I haven't felt like this since I was, nearly 20 years ago. So that was a real big moment. I was like, that is insane. But that further motivated me to continue. Now, again, I don't do all dayers like that in general. That was a one-off. But that experience really made me reflect on, oh my goodness, this is powerful stuff. So, been doing that, and then this is where you kind of get into the esoteric side of things. I would say my sixth sense, my intuition, my connection. What would you call it? Your connection to source or God or chi, prana, whatever you want to call it, that has become heightened.
Mm.
And I hand on heart, like I'm a very open guy. Like if you're into things, I'm like, cool, you do you, man, like amazing. So if I'd met someone that was super religious, like, yeah, dude, you do you, amazing, that's your thing. But that, really kind of connecting to spirituality really wasn't something that kind of resonated or interested me. I was like, oh, well, cool, they're doing their thing. But as like you flush, that stuff starts to, it's the weirdest thing to explain, because I never thought I would be someone that would be entertaining that sort of stuff. But you do get more of a connection to spirit or nature or this energy. It's a weird thing. So like my intuition is more kind of in tune, and you kind of I started leaning into understanding about universal law and all of these, how the universe. I just naturally leaned into that stuff. So that's been a really interesting kind of journey, because again, I love personal growth and development. I'm always into it, and health and the whole thing. I'm always learning, but that stuff I never really looked at. And then as I've gone through this journey, you just sense things more, and I've really got into it. So that's been one of the biggest things. And then this is kind of minor. This is not really improvements, but I've developed a really good relationship with my liver, if that makes sense. I understand now the flow of bile, and that bile flow being real. It's this energy giving, right? And when it's flowing, and you build a relationship with your liver and your gallbladder, when it's feeling good, when it's not. It's a weird thing. Was before you'd just be like, this is my body and I've got organs in there, I don't know where they are. Whereas now I know exactly where they are, and I can feel, oh, okay, there's maybe a bit of congestion coming into play here, and the next flush needs to happen, or man, everything's flowing today, So that was another weird byproduct of doing it. And then essentially doing the flushing, all the other bits of detoxification, which I think are important, they all just come together beautifully, right? So yeah, it's been a beautiful journey, and did my 60-second flush this week, and had some absolutely lovely green gems that came, and I'm like, wow, listen, if they're still coming out, I'll still stay in the game. But eventually, I don't want to do them forever. I want to get to a point where it's like a quarterly thing or whatever. But I'm still extremely fascinated about this whole topic, so much so that I'm continuing to do it, and I'm carving out, it's part of my schedule. So it's been a beautiful journey, and the aesthetic things like the hair and the skin, it's all nice, but it's been more than that. It's been like, the kind of spiritual element's been good. Energy, there's so many random things that now I have to look at like every 10th flush, like, okay, what's the difference between my 50th and my 60th? Whereas in the beginning, you're doing like 3 or 4 and then massive shift, another 3 or 4, massive shift. But then as you go through the process, it's more leaps, and then you reflect back and you're like, oh, wow, okay, I definitely feel different on that stuff. And that, do you know what I mean? So as long as that's still happening, I'll keep doing it.
Yeah. So I'm really getting that for you. It wasn't so much your health or a crisis that, brought you to it and is sticking you to it. It's more of this drive for optimal vitality and optimal life, life vigor and lifespan, and just quality of life. And, it's like, for me, it's also kind of like the edge there, maybe my Aquarian kind of thing is like, what can we even get to? Like what's out there? Like, do we even know? And like Jeremy was also saying, like, 20 flushes in, like 10 years into his thing, his brain is like turning back on in different ways that have been not available to him. And like his face is changing, or your hair is changing. It's like there are so many things. And like, also, since maybe we could touch on this, but I believe you're flushing like pretty, so you've done 62 flushes and it's maybe only been a year and a half or something that all
Yeah,
the
so now I'm into doing double flushes once a week. So again, I just keep pushing the boundaries, right? I was like, all right, okay. So I think I first started doing one every 2 weeks. And I was like, this is cool, it's good cadence. And then I was like, I remember being on holiday with my wife, and I was like, how can I speed this up? Because I want to get to the 50 as soon as possible, right? And I was thinking, right, I could do twice a week. So I could do it on like a Monday and then like a Thursday. And I was thinking, oh, but that's not convenient. That's a lot of work and a lot of prep. And I don't know what to do. And then just again, through the community and through people who are chapters ahead, the narrative of like triple, double flushes came about. And I was like, oh, okay, let's push the envelope here. Let's try it out. And what I love as well is there is no set protocol. Like people have evolved their own. So doing a double flush, the way I do it within a 12-hour window. Some people do it within a 24-hour window. There's no set rules, and people are all just pushing the boundaries to see what works for them. So yeah, now I'm doing twice a week within a 12-hour period. And I find that, again, very productive. And again, I'm just like, right, let's just get to the end result as soon as possible. And that for me in my life right now works.
Mm-hmm.
My wife is expecting our first child in June, so that will stop as soon as the baby turns up. That's gonna stop because the baby comes first. And I don't even know if I will be able to. I will continue flushing, but it's secondary. It will be as and when it fits in. So another motivation for me right now is just get as many done before the baby turns up, because then I know all bets are off in terms of when I can do them and how often. I know I guarantee you I won't be able to do double flushes, but within a 12-hour window, that's not going to happen. So that drives me now. But as I said, I'm still seeing stones, and I'm still testing things out even now, to see what works and what doesn't work. And I always pass that information on to people. And I love it. I think it's brilliant. And I think, I just want to, as I said, what drives me is supreme health. And I now know doing things like the Bob Beck protocol, where I knew my liver was just going crazy. And I was like, okay, it's definitely liver has a definite value in the whole detox play. So I knew it was important. We found techniques that worked. And then I just pursued to do it and evolve it and learn. And so the stuff I do now is nowhere near what the protocol and the book, it's the skeleton of it, but the things I use to prep and all of that stuff is different and will definitely evolve as well, because I'm sure what works now may not work down the line at some point.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, congratulations to you and your wife for your
Thank you. Yeah.
on the way. It's very exciting. Smart to try to get in as much as you can too beforehand. Yeah. But part of the reason why I was wanting to point out that you've been doing like a lot in a condensed period of time is that those results you're seeing, I really feel like, since the liver is like a processing, it's like a processing powerhouse of our body, right? So it's like you are like quickly making it more efficient, like quickly things are getting out of there. But then the liver gets to catch up the rest of the body, right? Like as it becomes more efficient, then it's going to start to like sift through, siphon out any of the things that, have had to back up into other areas, and hopefully make you even cleaner and, a smoother running machine in a lot of other places. And so I think some of the results that you're seeing, like I'd be curious to see kind of, and hopefully I will see, but like kind of the ripening of those things, like what you're experiencing now in terms of the spiritual growth, the intuition coming on, this incredible, communication and understanding within your body, you know, like if that's already a result, I'm imagining that that may just unfold in time to be even stronger, you know, in those directions.
For sure. I agree that as you clear out the liver, the center of detoxification, the filter, everything is then given, it's like osmosis, like all the toxins can then start to drain from all the different joints and the areas, right? Something I didn't mention, it's quite a big one, is digestion. And again, when I got to the point when I started flushing, like to the level I am now, digestion was good. I was in a very good spot, but I kind of knew my limitations in a way. So, you know, within the realms of, right, this is my alley, and I'm good here. So I would say I was good. And then doing flushing took it to a new level. So now, like, I can eat, you know, and it's a bold statement, I can eat anything whenever I want, and I just digest it. Like, and again, I'm going back to a point where I was on at the peak of my like health healing challenges. I was taking digestive enzymes, stomach acids. What else was I taking? There's always three: enzyme, acids,
Bile.
bile. That was it. Yeah, bile, ox bile. That was it. There's always a trifecta. I was in such a bad, like at the very beginning, my digestion was so bad. I would have to fast 2 or 3 times a week, because as soon as something I ate would trigger just bad bloating and digest, it was terrible. And I was reflecting. So me and my wife went to Barbados for a honeymoon, and I just let loose, because it was like buffet, and it was like, you know, 5-star hotel, which we'd never done before. I just went big. I was like, I have this, and I had no problems.
Wow.
And I was reflecting with her. I was like,
wow,
look how different my digestion is compared to like way back when. But even before I started, when it was good, I knew my limitations. I couldn't like go, I could have the odd bad meal, and I was healthy eating anyway, but I knew, don't push it, you know, this is you know, where the gate is, right? You don't want to go too crazy. Whereas now, like, that's all gone. I can eat whatever, and it's, oh my goodness, it's so liberating. That said, I eat well, and I'll continue to eat well, but again, just pushing the boundaries out, just testing, and like, oh wow, I feel fine, and not having any digestive issues, or it's just beautiful. That's been a really big turning point.
Yeah, that's like actual freedom, you know.
Yeah, massive.
Yeah, the liberation that comes from, I mean, because there's ways that we cope and we convince ourselves we're doing fine once we sort of figure out like I mean, for me, it's like pretty extreme too. It's like, well, what do you mean I have 5 foods? I can eat them. I feel, you know, I can sort of eat them, and I'm doing great. I'm doing fine, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's almost like easy to forget that like you're actually inside of quite a small cage, you know?
Yeah. But again, it's the flushing creates that condition, but I feel the diet that I have gives me that flexibility to eat what I want, right? So again, I'm big into the Weston A. Price principles, the GAPS principles. So I'm making ferments, I'm drinking my broths, like I'm into it 100%. So, you know, as I said, for me, there's never a magic bullet there. It's because I do all of these other things in tandem that create that condition, right? But wow, when I reflect back, it's just so liberating to be like, this is like the reality of how I can, you know, how I can operate, you know. So it's lovely, you know. And I think when you've come from that spot, I remember being desperate. I remember my digestion was so bad. I was desperate. I was literally like online thinking, what can I buy? And I remember coming across Masszyme's digestive enzymes. Oh my God, that's it. That's gonna cure me. And I bought it, and they did help. they did help. If I think about that's where I was, you know, 5 or 6 years ago to now, it's like, wow, you know, detoxification is the key. You know, it is the key.
Whew. Yeah, that's a pretty big note, Adam.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, it's been super fun. I want to get in a couple, maybe like kind of an interesting, I just love the way that you've shared with us your story, and I really truly am excited to see as part of the community and one of my new friends, to kind of see how this all unfolds for you, you know, and how you continue to hold the torch, you know, in the front with your spirit of exploration and some drive to sort of beat the game, you know.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm continuing to do it because I'm seeing these new unfolding of benefits that, like you said, I'm thinking, where can it go?
Yeah.
And also, I know there's people out there that need the guidance, right? Of, you know, what is working, what isn't working. Because again, I'm giving you like the highlight reel here, right? The Instagram highlight reel of everything's amazing. But trust me, life's like, healing's a journey. And even in the flushing journey, there haven't all been good flushes. And sometimes I felt a bit like, oh my God, I feel terrible. And the frustration of it's not working. But I've, you know, the way I view stuff, I'm persistent. I keep trying things, and, you know, I like the fact that I can, you know, look back and help people that, you know, may be struggling, because I've just tried so much wacky stuff, and, you know, some stick, some don't, you know, but it's all learnings. And I feel like we're kind of paving the way a little bit for, you know, what is possible.
Yeah, totally. On that note, do you have any sort of standout flushes, like maybe any example of something that was like pretty bad, or went kind of weird, or was challenging for you, that you could share with us?
So obviously, getting dud flushes is frustrating, because you think, oh my God, you know, I want this satisfaction. So that's annoying. But there's never been a painful flush. Like, sometimes a couple of days after, there's like this, I can feel congestion, like stones have moved forwards and now they're just sat there. And then I'm waiting for the next week to like roll around. Again, it doesn't cause me like pain. It's just discomfort. Like, oh God, I can feel it. It's just that. But the thing is, I had that before. So again, part of my journey, I remember going to hospital because I had gallbladder pain. Like, and didn't mention this one, did I? And I was in hospital, and they were like scanning the gallbladder. Oh, there's no stones there. And obviously I now know, because it's not calcified stones, right? That's the ones that they could find. And they're like, well, if it keeps persisting, we'll have to whip it out. And I remember thinking at the time, no, that's not going to happen. But I've had gallbladder pain before, and I'd get really like, oh my God, what is it? Because now I know, it's okay, cool, it's just congestion, it will go. So that's not comfortable, but it's okay. There was one time when I flushed, and normally you would feel the pressure on your right hand side. But there was just one time it started on my kind of center left. That's not the liver. And then eventually, like, you got to just relax and lie into it and breathe, and the body, you have to relax and let go. The body slowly just moves. It's like a slow rhythm, and like, you kind of get into this like breathing rhythm, whereas you breathe in and you breathe down, and it kind of gently brings the stones along. And then the next day, the iconic like rock, like it stood out. And that to me was, wow, that was in my pancreatic duct, 100%, 100%. Which again, but, you know, get those things out, that further aids to digestion, because that's where all the enzymes are produced, right? So that was a moment where the next day I spoke to my wife and I was like, oh wow, there was a moment last night. There was some pressure, but it wasn't, again, never uncomfortable, never painful, but it was like, that's different. That's on the other side. So that's the standout thing that happens.
Yeah, that's
But it's probably the only negatives is just when you feel like, oh my God, I feel groggy the next day. And really that's around, the lesson from that was really hone in on your binders. Like, don't leave any flush behind without taking some binders, you know, because you will feel it if you know, and at a varying degrees, you know. So I know some people that really suffer the next day. I don't, but if I don't take binders, I will, you know. So they're the lessons really, just post flush, feeling a bit off.
Yeah, wow, that is really epic visual that you shared with us of the pancreatic duct release of that big stone. And the way you were talking about the breathing, it definitely resonates for me because when I had that like crazy massive dump flush,
I know, that was a great video. I love
yeah,
seeing that.
that night, like, I mean, at that time, I was feeling pressure building up, and like, sometimes if that's happening, if there's that much movement, I really am doing basically breathing, and I'm directing my breathing to relax it, because it almost feels like it builds up in like to like a bend or a corner or something, and I'm like, I think that I can make a difference by just like relaxing that area,
Yeah.
like, breathing the space into it. And then, like, yeah, you described it so well. It's like chink, chink, it kind of just starts gently rolling down through the like
Yeah.
slide,
Yeah.
But yeah, it is super cool that you could feel it in a different place and that it came out of something so important like the pancreatic duct. It's mind-blowing how we are so ignorant to the fact that this stuff builds up in all these different ways and places. And it's also really cool to me how we start to learn and get in touch with our bodies, even people like showing their stones that like are the shape of like, one of the junctions or the ducts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could deny it. You could deny it, but it's like, it's also like right there in plain sight,
Yeah.
just believe.
And also, I like to, again, you create a relationship with your liver and just not talking, but I'm sending like good energy to my liver during the process. Like I'm thanking, I don't know what gender the liver is. I'll say him, but I'm thanking the liver for all the great work it's done. And again, it's not, I'm not speaking it as I'm lying there. It's just like the thought process of, thank you for holding on and doing a job, and now I'm letting you release. And again, that resonates with me, right? And that works, and it's just puts you into a good relaxing state. And what's interesting, what's coming up for me is I kind of have two different strategies for my night flush and my day flush. My night flush, I'm very much, it's nighttime, I'm engaging with the liver. And then my day flush, I have a playlist of like this kind of mantra based music. It's very like high vibration music. So I have slightly different, and again, I don't know how that's evolved, but I have this one playlist that I always play, and it's beautiful. It's such amazing, beautiful songs, like mantra based songs. And again, really relaxing. So I do, yeah, again, it's weird what you just evolve and end up doing. I play the same playlist in the morning and the morning flash, all adds up.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, as we kind of come to more closure, I would love to hear there'll probably be people that see this that haven't begun the process, aren't really sure about it. What would you say to someone who's kind of not sure about starting the liver flushing process or feeling hesitant? Like, I don't know, what would you say to them? What would you
I
like?
would say that it's okay to feel hesitant. The reality is there's a reason why you've been drawn to it. And most likely you're in a spot where you need to heal and you're having to look at flushing. I would say get into a community with people that know what they're doing. and be brave, because, you know, hopefully, you know, us having this conversation, all of the great conversations you're having, people can see, wow, there's some pretty cool stuff that can happen, right? So yeah, it's completely normal to feel hesitation. The holistic rabbit hole, there's so many different, you know, you're talking about medical medium, that's a rabbit hole, there's so many, and it's like, where do I go, who do I trust? Really, it's, you know, you got to just go off your intuition. If this resonates with you, pursue it. Stay in the game, educate yourself, because again, really, I think fear comes from ignorance, and ignorance comes from not knowing. And when you know and you've done it, like now, you know, I've done 62 flushes, right? So that's 62 jars of olive oil and lemon juice, right? It's not even like, after like, I'd say the third or fourth flush, you're not even thinking about stuck stones or it being, it's not even in, it doesn't even resonate on my kind of frequency. I'm not even thinking this could be dangerous. It's not even there. But I appreciate people about to start, there's hesitation. I get that completely, but you get in the game, you educate yourself, you gain knowledge, you lean off people that have, you know, a couple of chapters ahead. And then when you're into it, it's you know, it's easy. It's, you know, you find a routine that works for you. And then you'll start seeing those layers of the onion peel away, right? And it's a beautiful thing when I remember just looking in the mirror like, is my gray's going? Like, you know, just random things. And I'm like to my wife, is it going? Yeah. And then these random things come just by staying in the process, right? So yeah, I just say, educate yourself, work with people that know what they're doing, and just, you know, commit. And, you know, I think me committing to 50 was a random thing, but I've got to all these levels. But that's obviously a lot. I would just say commit to an X amount. So whether it's, you know, a program and it might be 4 or 5 or whatever, and then make a decision on, okay, cool, what's changed? And normally the first couple of flushes, you get some huge, pretty decent releases, right? Depending on, some people are more congested, right? Depending on their condition, but normally most people get a good old release and they're like, oh my goodness, you know? So yeah, there's definitely light in the tunnel with flushing. And if it resonates and it's calling them, definitely pursue it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Adam. Where can people find your sort of presence if they wanted to check out your stuff and your
Siena, I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been great, and it's great to connect to you as well, because I've seen your content and I love what you're doing in the space. So thank you. So there's a couple of ways to connect with me. I've obviously got my podcast, the Ideal Day podcast, and that covers, it's a broader spectrum. It covers health and personal growth. Basically all the stuff I love covers in that podcast. I also have a more dedicated presence on detox. It's called the Detox Blueprint. That's a group on Facebook where liver flushing is a part of it, but it's all of the other modalities of detox, all the other pillars. So that's a group on Facebook. And again, I'm just trying to spread the message and as we said earlier, create a more of a hierarchical approach to detox and healing.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Yeah, I've had a super good time. And I really think this is extremely valuable content. So thank you so much for just taking us so clearly through your process and your steps and your insight. I think that this will be soothing balm for a lot of people, and offer perspective, something to kind of hold on to. So thank you so much for sharing with the greater community.
And Siena, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Hey, this is Siena Songbird. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Adam as much as I did. Lots of great insight and perspective for us all to chew on. And if you would like to check out more interviews of this style of the Veteran Liver Flusher series, you can check that out here, and make sure to subscribe to my channel for more awesome content around our magical, miraculous liver. Thanks.